Good evening. Welcome to Americana. I'm your host, Raquel Herring. And this is our Democrat host, Shakia Moore and Willie Montague. And we are your go-to spot for everything the 2024 presidential election. With just 27 days left until Election Day, the race is tighter than ever, and every move counts. Let's jump into the latest campaign highlights and see what's happening on the trail. Vice President Kamala Harris has been making the rounds in a strategic press run. During her appearance on ABC's The View, she mentioned that there's little she would have done differently from President Biden over the past 4 years. However, she did point out one key difference. If elected president, she would include a Republican in her cabinet. Shakia, could this approach of bipartisan leadership help broaden her appeal?
I think it would. I mean, I think it shows her maturity and her candor as the soon-to-be commander-in-chief of this country. I think it also just shows that she is willing to extend the olive branch and dismiss this notion that Republicans and Democrats cannot see eye to eye on any issue. I think it also goes to her demeanor as a woman to be able to say, I'm gonna put my pride aside and actually put country over politics. And they may not agree on everything, but the fact that she is extending an olive branch and even considering having a Republican to be within her most holies of holies, if I would say, it just shows the growth of this country and where we can actually go as one.
Nice.
All right. Well, in this particular moment, I'm going to say this. Dr. Ben Carson said something some time ago, and it was a eagle has two wings, left wing, right wing, takes both to fly. I do believe that there is a need for bipartisanship. However, this is where I would say that I think this is political posturing. I do not believe that this administration shows any form or fashion a genuine approach to bipartisanship. I also think it's very scary that Vice President Harris is saying that there was nothing that she would change over the last 4 years. If anyone has seen this current administration, it has been a disaster to the economy, small business owners, family as a whole. And I think to say there would be little to nothing to change shows exactly the trajectory of what she would do should she be elected November 5th. But we know that's not going to happen. So I think it's just I think it's alarming um, to say that I'm going to put someone on a cabinet. It's basically like giving a dog a bone. Hey, quiet down. Vote for me, little guys down there. I'm going to make sure to look out for you. Okay, get over it. We're not falling for the tricks. Now, you may have some individuals that have lost their minds, such as some of those 200 Republicans that have endorsed her, but the other ones with common sense, the rest of the American population, we understand that there's a falsehood here, and we can't fall for those tricks. So anyway,
This is literally I think, and it goes to show that Will, my co-host, is spewing the rhetoric that Dark MAGA, because he identified as Dark MAGA as far as yesterday, is seriously willing to like perpetuate, continuously in this country. The vice president literally just said that she is looking to have a and you were considered to be an outcast or a black sheep. And so it just shows the immaturity of where the party is. And I'm just really excited to see that she's taking a stand and say, you know what? We didn't do everything right. And I would have to agree with you, Will, that there were some things that I was expecting her to say that she would have done differently. But, she has to start somewhere. So with her saying that she's willing to have a Republican in her cabinet, I think that shows growth where this country can actually go.
Okay. Well, there
So
you have that. Oh, okay.
I'll say this. And you got
real quick.
If these people have such a disdain, and you are saying now they are standing for the democracy of the United States.
Let's not talk about democracy now because we had someone who challenged us on January 6th.
Look, I gotta move it.
How can you do that?
Oh,
but
my
you
gosh.
got a paycheck.
You can trust that we will keep you updated with every move from Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Now it's time to move on to political programs. Hurricane Milton has intensified to a Category 4 and is expected to make landfall on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris criticized former President Trump, accusing him of lacking empathy and spreading misinformation about the federal response to Hurricane Helene. Willie, with tension so high during this natural disaster, how can Kamala Harris build the trust of the American citizens?
Well, as it was so well spoken of on our show yesterday, that did I understand civics? So if I understood civics, therefore, why is she wanting to get involved? That means that the governor, Ron DeSantis, would need to be speaking to the president of the United States. Now, let's make this very clear. She has been harassing Governor Ron DeSantis, and Governor Ron DeSantis has made it very clear that he does not want to have a conversation with her because he needs to have a conversation with Biden. That is the person who is supposed to be running this country. Now, let me say this overall. President Trump is not out there saying anything that is not relevant and apparent, that the government is not showing up right now for, first of all, Hurricane Helene victims, let alone what needs to happen going forward for a plan with happening with Milton. And so overall, the government and their entities, they're trash. And so what we need is to focus local and get to the state where it needs to be. And she needs to, if she wants to do anything, she needs to give a pep talk to Sleepy Joe and ask him to wake up and actually put some effort towards the states in this crisis right now.
Sometimes if you allow a fool to talk, they will make your argument for you. So let's ground ourselves with what misinformation means and what disinformation means. Misinformation is when you speak on something and you may have said the wrong thing, but it wasn't intended to cause harm, okay? Disinformation is when you say something with the intent to cause harm. We are seeing in this nation that the Trump administration, when they did this in 2020 regarding the COVID crisis, right, the pandemic, we are now seeing that same type of misinformation and disinformation about the hurricane relief regarding Helene, and now with Milton on the heels hitting Florida within like a couple of hours. And so what I am just really perplexed about is how we can uphold lies and say them as if it's truth at the expense of others right now. Currently, currently we have hundreds of people who lost their lives to Milton, to Helene, right? We have states and communities who are still submerged underwater. And for someone who is running to be the chief officer of this nation to intentionally cause harm to people who are currently still underwater with no regard, and even when he's fact-checked, he's still standing 10 toes down on the lies, it just shows that he honestly doesn't have empathy. He doesn't care about himself. He doesn't care about anyone else except himself.
The misinformation and the disinformation that was stated.
That FEMA is funneling money, or that they've run out of money, and that they are providing immigrants with resources, which is why we have run out of money. That is false.
That is not false.
That is
because
false.
Actually the press secretary for Joe Biden months ago literally said it herself. I have seen the clips in comparison to her trying to disapprove what was happening, and then they went and showed the clip where she literally said that funds were set there by FEMA and that there was some allocated for these migrants.
So you are correct in that, okay? FEMA does disperse the money that is allocated for asylum seekers, but that is not the money that is set aside for hurricane relief. That is where your party intentionally causes harm to communities, because now we have people who are afraid to reach out to FEMA because they are thinking that, oh my God, my house is destroyed, you know, my property is destroyed, but I'm hearing Trump on one hand saying that there's no money, and then we have Kamala Harris over here who's saying that there is money. That is causing harm to people because now the trust of the community is not in the government. And, those are resources that's there for them.
And that is where the trust should never be, because the worst place to have your trust is in the government, because the government
and that's a big reason why a lot of them don't show up for money either.
But yet he wants to make America
because
great
they
again.
say that they don't want any money from the government, they don't trust the government, and they don't come in to get help.
All Harris has stated was about $750. You trying to tell me that out of all the victims, all the things that are happening through this time from North Carolina, Florida, all across the board, that all that she can come up with, but they can come up with $650 million to send to Taiwan. Taiwan.
I just want folks to remember when Trump
I'm supposed to close y'all out.
But listen, I just want folks, I'll let you close. I'll let you close.
No, go ahead, quick.
I just want folks to remember that when Trump threw paper towels to the folks in Puerto Rico after they were just hit with Hurricane Florence, I think it was, like the disrespect of that moment. It just shows that he's continuing to do what he's always done.
Coming up next, we have some social media updates and the latest polls. Collard greens. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Back, social media has been keeping us in the loop on the 2024 presidential election. Let's check out some social media updates. Civil rights groups filed a lawsuit in Georgia on Monday seeking to extend the voter registration deadline by a week. They argue that Hurricane Helene, which struck just before the crucial final week leading up to the October 7th deadline, prevented many from registering in time. Shakia, with this legal battle unfolding, could the extended deadline change the dynamics of voter turnout in Georgia?
I would think so. I mean, if they don't give the extension, it just further proves that Georgia is still, suppressing voter rights for Black and brown communities. And not even just Black and brown at this point. We're talking about the entire state of Georgia, which actually turned blue when Stacey Abrams was running for governor at that time. And so we are seeing, the continuation of the dark history of Georgia and suppressing votes. I believe it was back in 1965 with Bloody Sunday. I think the president at that time was Lyndon B. Johnson, and he made a voting rights bill that would allow African Americans at that time to vote freely without there being a barricade that would stop them from getting to the polls. And so if Georgia continues to go against what was actually federally mandated, it just shows that they are intentionally trying to steal the vote from people who actually are supposed to be a part of this democracy. But we know Republicans don't like, when they lose things. They throw tantrums and storm capitals and, burn buildings down and stuff. No, Will?
It is so interesting that you mentioned Lyndon B. Johnson, the same individual who came up with the LBJ Great Society, which literally put single mothers in the welfare state of mind, and then stated that he would have Negroes, I'll phrase it lightly, but that's not what he actually said, Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years. He was never for actually the vote of Black. At that time, it wasn't Black or brown, but just Black folks, period. But what I think this does is it undermines and it brings a distrust when you go and try to extend it. I also believe that if you look at it, they had an early voting time, and that gave ample time for voters to go out and do what they need to do. And so to go out and say, we need to extend it, because of course it was a civil rights move, because they wanted to go and try to rally some more dead people. And so to literally go and want to extend, they want to go and extend it. So
I'm gonna be respectful because we live on TV.
So they want to extend it because, of course, they're trying to do what they want to do best. Because I believe they saw it. The writing was on the wall. Trump is leading the way in Georgia, so they want to use, as Kiera just mentioned, it is, it shouldn't be using this hurricane for this. Well, they're using Hurricane Helene for their political posturing to say we need one more week.
Where does the compassion come in as a governor, as a man who was elected into office to protect, to serve, and to provide equity amongst all of his constituents who voted him into office? If he knows that his state was in a state of emergency, and the reason why folks are asking for an extension is because of a natural disaster, it's not because folks were just out just frolicking just because.
You want this to happen all across the country?
If it hindered them from casting their vote, absolutely. Because why not?
North Carolina, Florida, all of those places should go out of the way, even though every single state, from my knowledge, has early voting, same-day voting. Voting is not until November 25th.
But that's what your party is really adamant about.
November 5th.
Your party is really adamant about not necessarily stealing the vote or suppressing or silencing the vote. You really don't want equity.
No, we want election integrity.
This is the humanity of both parties. This is the humanity of everyone who considers themselves to be a citizen of the United States.
Listen, this is the thing. You have NAACP.
Sometimes you argue with fools and they tell on themselves. Yes. Sometimes it's just best to be quiet and let fools talk.
And allow the wisdom of the age to speak.
I'm going to let this fool talk because obviously democracy is not at the point of conversation at this point.
It's always democracy. I hope they write a book about it.
They should.
Yeah.
Because your party tried to steal it.
Though,
it may impact both parties, but this is the key. The NAACP and all these other now that have turned to these left-leaning organizations, They spend all of their time spending money and BLM going up and down the streets in the schools talking about go to vote, go to vote. You didn't do your due diligence in that time that you raise all these dollars
you
to go out and get people to
believe
register to vote?
I really want to believe that you are not this delulu. Like, I really want to believe that you do not,
is that you think,
at your core, Will, that you do not believe that the people, the residents of Georgia were just out frolicking and they just intentionally did not cast their vote.
How might the outcome? How might the I can't get it out there. How might the outcome of this lawsuit influence future voting laws in states prone to natural disasters, and could it set a precedent for adjusting voter registration deadlines during emergencies?
See, this is, again, why we have to be very cautious with anything that goes into lawsuits and laws. And when you go, I am all for people. I want this to be very
but again,
clear.
It's for both parties.
Right. I want this to be very clear. I want you to vote. I want you to register to vote. But I have never been, will never be, and I would hope that my co-host here would never be for government overreach. I believe the moment that this opens the door, and that's the question you're asking, will this set a precedent
for government overreach.
It will begin.
I am for the people to have a fair
and I'm for the people too.
But
I wasn't
so
voting,
we've lost
casting
that
their
they
ballot.
would have had to register.
But let's be honest with this. When you start opening up things like this, you're going to open it up for other things. It could just be a wind blowing through. When will you set it? Now you got to go into.
Say that to the people who are currently underwater.
No.
Say that it was just a wind blowing through to the folks who are underwater right now, Will. How about that?
We are getting closer.
Order.
We are getting closer and closer to the 2024 presidential election. Let's check in on the latest polls. A new poll from the New York Times and Siena College shows just 1 month before Election Day, Trump leads Vice President Harris by 13 points in Florida and 6 points in Texas. Florida was previously considered a battleground state, but Trump won it in 2016 and 2020. And it has trended more Republican in recent years. Will it? With these key states leaning toward Trump, can Harris close the gap in time?
Absolutely not. Let me explain something to you. Just the other day, it was a clip, social media, that we had right here on the show. And it was him saying, oh, Texas and Florida, this right now, they're swinging. I called it. I said, no, they are not swinging for VP Harris. Not at all. They are always going to support, especially because we have common sense and we understand that these states here need, because the fools is really the party of the donkeys, okay?
Oh, wow.
So what we need to realize is, hopefully they'll kick the right bucket one day. But anywho, nonetheless, we look at Florida, we look at Texas, and overwhelmingly we have people there that are saying, wait a minute, what destruction will come to these beautiful states letting a Harris and Walz administration go into the White House? That just sounds like my stomach turns to think that it's going to be.
Today I am filled with joy and confidence, because when you are a woman of class, there's no need to argue with the fool, right? And so to your question, Raquel, I think that we have discredited states like Florida because, yes, we were a battleground state at one point and we have become such a conservative state and we were red. But if you look at Florida more intently, we are actually purple in a lot of counties. And I've mentioned this before on the show, where you have the Villages, who is predominantly conservative through and through. And I think they've awakened to this Kamala Harris and Walz dance that we're going to be doing from now until Election Day. I'm excited to see that other parts of the state, and not even just in Florida, but like in other battleground states, they are wanting a change. Folks are tired of having this same dance back and forth with idiots trying to convince them of what democracy is. If democracy is so free and given to everybody, then it should be accessible to everybody. There shouldn't be any barriers. Folks should be able to go and vote. If they want to vote by mail, they should be able to do that. If they want to go vote early, they should be able to do that. And if they want to be like me, who votes on election day, because that is how I was raised to do, you have the option to do that. And we're seeing a lot of states, they're tired. Folks are tired of this same dance. Folks are just over the whole division and all of that. Folks just want to have a country that they can thrive, live, love who they want, read books, the books that of their choosing. Folks just want to live comfortably and just live an equal and fair life.
Fake news, folks, fake news.
Of course it's fake news.
Fake news.
It's fake news.
Listen, the only idiots that crams down the word democracy is the radical left, because all they want to do is make it about them. They're selfish. They're weak-kneed, jelly-back cowards.
Wow.
And the only way to move this country forward is to wake up, America, wake up and vote for Donald J. Trump.
And there you have it, folks. Dark MAGA at its finest.
Is at it. I'll get everybody a T-shirt.
My goodness. Well, that kind of wraps it. Anything else? Any last words on that?
I have nothing.
I'm for the people.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in to Americana. We will meet you right back here tomorrow at 7:30. And Hurricane Milton is coming. Please, people, be safe. Get yourself protected. Do everything you can to stay safe and be with your loved ones. Please tell them that you love them. God bless you. See you tomorrow night. Stay tuned.